James had hunted the hardwood bottoms and pine edges of South Carolina for most of his life. Deer season was a familiar ritual: early mornings, the quiet creak of a stand, the smell of damp leaves and earth. He knew the woods the way most people know their own neighborhoods. That's why what happened to him one fall evening still unsettles him to this day. He was rifle hunting for whitetail, settled into his elevated deer stand as the light faded. The woods were calm in that way hunters recognize immediately, too calm, almost expectant. Squirrels had gone silent, and even the distant birds seemed to have disappeared. James chalked it up to the changing light and stayed focused, watching the trails below. That's when he noticed the eyes. At first, he thought it might be a deer or maybe a raccoon lingering at the edge of the timber. Two red points glowed from deeper in the woods, far too steady to be a reflection from his own light. They weren't blinking. They weren't moving the way animal eyes usually do. They were fixed on him. Watching. James felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. He slowly scanned the area, trying to make out a body attached to the eyes, but the darkness swallowed everything beyond those glowing points. Then the forest answered his unease with sound, an abrupt, violent crack of a heavy limb snapping somewhere to his left. It wasn't the casual snap of a deer stepping wrong or a tree settling. It was forceful, deliberate, followed by another, and then another. Each break echoed through the woods like a warning. Whatever was moving out there was large, much larger than any animal James had ever encountered while hunting. His heart began to race. He sat frozen in the stand, gripping his rifle, listening as the heavy footsteps moved closer. Leaves crunched under immense weight. Branches were pushed aside, not quietly, but with an almost careless strength. When James finally worked up the nerve to reach for his flashlight, his hands were shaking. He clicked it on and swept the beam through the trees, expecting perhaps a bear or some explanation that would calm his nerves. What the light revealed did the opposite. Standing just beyond the edge of the beam was a massive, upright figure. The light caught its form in pieces at first: a broad chest, shoulders far wider than any man's, and arms that hung unnaturally long at its sides. When the beam finally reached its face, James locked eyes with the same red glow he'd seen earlier, now unmistakably set into a massive, shadowed head. The creature was towering, easily 10 feet tall by James's estimation, its body covered in dark, matted hair. It wasn't hunched like a bear. It wasn't moving on all fours. It stood like a man, but nothing about it felt human. James felt pure terror grip him. From his elevated stand, he realized how vulnerable he was. The creature was close enough that he feared it could reach up, grab him, and pull him straight out of the stand. For a moment that felt far longer than it probably was, they stared at each other in silence. Then James noticed the smell. It hit him suddenly and violently, an overwhelming stench like rotting garbage mixed with wet animal musk. It was so strong it made his eyes water and his stomach turn. The smell seemed to cling to the air, thick and oppressive, as if the creature itself radiated it. As he stared down at the being, James heard a sound that chilled him more than the size or the smell. A low, breathy noise escaped the creature, something between a grunt and a chuckle. To James, it sounded like laughter, mocking, deliberate, and disturbingly aware. That was the breaking point. James didn't fire his rifle. He didn't shout. He didn't try to scare it off. Survival instinct took over completely. Slowly at first, then with growing urgency, he began to climb down from the stand, never taking his eyes off the figure. The creature didn't charge. It didn't retreat. It simply watched, those red eyes locked onto him the entire time. The moment James's boots hit the ground, he turned and ran. He didn't stop to collect his gear or look back. He sprinted through the woods toward his truck, heart pounding, lungs burning, convinced every second that something massive was following just behind him. When he finally reached the safety of his vehicle and slammed the door shut, he sat there shaking, struggling to process what he had just experienced. Even after leaving the area, James couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been toyed with. The laughter echoed in his mind. The smell lingered in his nose long after he got home. In the days that followed, James replayed every detail, searching for answers. He began to wonder if something he'd done had attracted the creature. He'd been using deer calls and scent lures that day, strong attractants meant to draw in whitetail. Not far from his hunting area was a turkey farm, full of noise, feed, and activity. In hindsight, he questioned whether all of it combined might have drawn something else out of the woods, something far more dangerous. James has hunted since that night, but he admits it's never been the same. The woods no longer feel empty when they go quiet. Sometimes, when the forest falls still and the light begins to fade, he feels watched again. And in those moments, he can't help but wonder if whatever he encountered that evening is still out there, just beyond the tree line, waiting and watching, amused by the fear it left behind.